Hi everyone, this is the second of the lessons. I'm going to do 3 of these lessons to talk you through the Afro Celt sound system song release. So for this lesson you're going to need your work booklets, you're going to need your score and a pen, and that should be all you need. Okay, here we go. So the first thing that I'd like us to talk about, we're going to talk about tempo, rhythm and meter. Just to refresh our memories, tempo is talking about the speed of the music. Remember, if you ever have a listening question, you need to think about, is the speed, what's the speed at the beginning? What's the speed at the end? Has it changed? Because especially if there's more than one mark available, you could be asked a question like that and there could be something in there. So tempo is the speed of the music. Rhythm. Rhythm is the pattern of different length notes, and in this piece it's quite important because this is a heavily percussion-based piece. So talking about different rhythms, different drives, different features of the rhythm. And then meter is the time signature. So how many beats in a bar? Does it change? What does that do to the feel of the music? Obviously, if something was in 3/4, it would have very much dance feel to it, sort of traditional waltz or something like that. So meter is the time signature, how many beats in a bar. Okay, I'd like you just to pause the video in a second. I've got 10 terms here, and I'd like you to sort them into whether you think they are tempo, rhythm, or meter. Okay, so if you press pause now. Okay, so free time. Free time is where there is a lack of tempo or meter. Okay, so it could be that you can't tell if there are 4 or 3 beats in a bar. It also means that the tempo, if there's no meter, that it's hard to judge the tempo as well. Swung is a rhythmic term. Okay, so that's where there's a slight sort of almost a triplet feel to a rhythm. So rather than bump, it's bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. Syncopation is offbeat rhythms. Okay, so where not just the first and the third beat of a bar is the sort of the strong beat, it's where rhythms cross over into weaker points in the bar. Triplets again is rhythmic. That's where you have 3 notes in the space of 2. So if I had 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's basically, rather than if you were fitting 4 notes in the space of 2, which would be the next note value down, it's 3. So you fit in they're slightly longer than the 2 notes, slightly shorter than the 4 notes. That's the wrong way around. Slightly shorter than the 2 notes, slightly longer than the 4 notes. Rubato, this is a tempo word. This is where you have a flexible tempo. We saw this in Esperanza Spalding's song, where especially when she is playing the bass guitar and singing herself, without any other performers, it's very much easier to do tempo rubato at a point like that when it's just one performer. 4/4 time is meter. That's where you have 4 crotchet beats in a bar. Simple is also to do with meter. Simple is where you count in crotchets. That's where there's a 4 on the bottom, or possibly a 2 for minims. Compound time is also meter. We looked at this when we looked at Queen. This is where you have an 8 on the bottom and you count in quavers that are grouped in 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that gives a very much sort of a swung feel naturally. Dotted is when we're referring to dotted rhythms. That's where you have, for instance, a dotted crotchet worth 1.5 beats and a quaver worth half a beat. So da, 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 da. BPM is beats per minute. This is a tempo term, so for more modern pieces you would have a beats per minute tempo. More traditional pieces you would have an Italian term like allegro, largo, moderato, etc. Okay, so that's hopefully given you a bit of an idea of the difference between those elements. Right, I want to look at the rhythm of Afro Celt, and I've picked out 3 of the loops here: loop 1, loop 3, and loop 8. So loop 1 is played on the baron, okay, the Irish Celtic traditional drum, which we looked at last time. And you can see that there's a very detailed rhythm going on here. Okay, so at the beginning, if my mouse is working, there it is. So we're in 4/4, so we already know the meter. We can see here we've got an example of a dotted rhythm here, so a dotted quaver worth 3/4 of a beat, and a semiquaver worth 1/4 of a beat. And then the semiquaver rests on the first beat of the bar there, gives a sense of syncopation. We've also got here, this symbol here is an accent, okay, and that is when you put an emphasis on a particular note. We've also got here at the end these triplets. So this is the space of 2 semiquavers, but we're fitting 3 notes in. And this is not to be confused with here. This is 3 real semiquavers. So on the first beat of the bar, we've got a semiquaver rest, and then we've got the remaining 3 that fit into a whole crotchet beat. Whereas here we've got a quaver, and then we're fitting 3 semiquavers into the space of 2 semiquavers at the end there. When we're writing for percussion, you can see here that the baron is on just 1 line. All right. The drum here is on a 5-line stave, but we've got a crosshead, and that means that basically it's not actually producing a specific pitch, because there's no treble clef or bass clef at the beginning. It's just different lines represent different drums. Okay, I want you to listen to this. Normally in our classroom, I would get you to play this with some drumsticks on the table, and we'd have a bit of a competition as to who could cope with the top line. But I want you to try and be ready to answer some questions about how rhythm is used in this song. So this is how these rhythms go. Okay, I'll play it one more time. Okay, so I want you to have a think about the answers to these questions. If you want to pause now, just so that you can have a think about what you've just heard. So, what instrument is the rhythmic backbone? Okay, so this is the instrument that's providing the main sort of rhythmic focus and accompaniment to the melodies that are going on. And this is provided by the baron. Okay, so you can see, if I just go back, you can see that obviously just by looking at it, it's got so many more notes than all the other parts. The other parts are just sort of providing a little bit of interest every now and then. So this talking drum just at the end of each 2-bar phrase. What articulation is used on all instruments to provide rhythmic drive? So in terms of articulation, we've got the accents, okay? We've also got these semiquaver patterns at the end of the 4-bar phrase, and they help to drive into the next 4-bar phrase. So you would see, hopefully, when you look at the score, that all of the loops are in 4-bar patterns, and that's how they're sort of layered up. So what's the name for when there are multiple rhythms on top of each other? Okay, and the term for that is polyrhythms. So poly meaning many. So similar to how we describe texture when we have polyphonic, this is polyrhythmic. Okay, so multiple rhythms on top of each other, and again, that's a feature of traditional African music, multiple rhythms on top of each other. Number 4, what is a common note length within the solos? Okay, so you need to have a little look at your scores at this point, and hopefully you will see that they are semiquaver based. lots and lots of semiquavers, lots of runs going up and down scales and arpeggios, and this is very much a feature of Celtic folk music. And then number 5, what Celtic rhythmic feature is typically used at the end of each bar or phrase? And that's where we have these triplets or plain old semiquavers, but this sort of drive forward. If you go bum ba-dum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum ba-dum bum ba-dum, it just gets a little bit tiresome. But if you get bum ba-dum ba-dum bum ba-dum ba-ba-da-bum, okay, and it helps you land on the first beat of the next bar or the next phrase. So that's a really good feature, and that's something that's really commonly achieved on the barra. And if we watch the video that we watched last week, the fact that you can twist your wrist with the beater fairly easily to get that sort of fast rhythmic drive into the next bar. Okay, so moving on. So I've got a question that I'd like you to sort of think about answering as if it were an exam style question. All right, I'm going to play you the piece and then I'm going to put some tips underneath the question to help you answer it. You can write it down if you wish. If you haven't got room or paper to do so, then that's okay, but there should be room somewhere in your pack for you to have a go at writing this. I know that some of you didn't fill up all of the lined background research space. There's also space on the very back page underneath the marking criteria, so you should have some room to write this down. Okay, so here are some of the things that you need to have a think about. Here are some of the things you need to have a think about in terms of answering this question. All right, so I'm going to let the piece play through. Listen out for some of the percussion instruments. Have a look at your score, making sure that you're able to think about some of these things. All right, here we go. Don't argue amongst yourself because of your loss of me. I haven't gone anywhere, but out of my body. Reach out and touch me. Make effort to speak to me. Call out and you'll hear me. Be happy for me. Info canoe. Info canoe. Reach out and touch me. Make effort to speak to me. Call out and you'll hear me. Be happy for me. Okay, hopefully that has given you enough time to think of what you might respond to the question with. So things to think about. Is there a clear pulse at the start? No, there isn't. We've got this sort of dreamlike introduction of sort of swirling sounds rather than actual music. We get a clear pulse happening when the bariton comes in with the rhythm that we've just looked at about 48 seconds. Once that tempo and that meter have been established by the bariton, then it remains the same throughout. Rhythmic features used at the end of some of the loops, we've just discussed that. So semiquaver triplets, those little rhythmic drives into the next section. And the predominant note value used in the solos is semiquavers. Okay, so if you were able to answer those 4 points within your answer, then you would have covered tempo, rhythm and meter. Good. Right, we're now going to move on to some other elements within this piece. So, tonality and harmony. So again, we're just going to revise what these elements refer to. So tonality is the key. All right, so if you remember way back to the beginning of year 10, we looked at key signatures and how they work, and that it sort of tells us which notes we have to sharpen or flatten within the key of a piece. So basically, which scale of notes that you're going to be using in a particular performance, and that we can use accidentals within the piece to cancel the notes of the key signature. Harmony is referring to the accompaniment and the chords that are created. So chords being 3 or more notes put together in a particular pattern, and we've looked at how to construct major and minor chords and also augmented and diminished chords. And use of harmony, so use of chords as the accompaniment to the main melody. So today I'm going to talk to you about modes. When I did the keywords video, I showed you a little image of what modes are. So what we have here, before we had major and minor scales, we had modes, and actually with modes it provides a lot more freedom than just having a major key or a minor key. So they're not really major or minor, and each have their own tonality, and if we treat them like a scale of notes, each has a different pattern of tones and semitones. So they originate from the early times of music, so pre-Baroque, pre-Renaissance, when not all the instruments could do semitones. So if you imagine a piano without all the black notes, you'd be quite restricted as to what keys you could use. Also, brass instruments work on the harmonic series, and before the invention of valves, were very restricted as to the notes that they could play, because they were just relying on the change of their embouchure, their mouth shape, in order to get different notes. So here is the image that I showed you. We've got 7 different modes, and what they are the patterns of white notes going from one note name to its next octave. And the Ionian mode, so this one here, goes from C to C using all the white notes. So this is also known as C major. So this particular pattern of tones and semitones is what we use for the major scale. But here we've got the Dorian mode, and if we were in D major, we would have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So here we can see that 2 notes that should be sharpened are not. So it's going to give a different feel to this particular mode if this was to be used. Here is the Mixolydian mode from G to G, and we would normally expect there to be an F sharp at the end, so that the raised 7th of the major scale to go to G, but there isn't this time. So that's only one note that's slightly changed. If we look at the Locrian mode, so if we were in B major, we would have 5 sharps. We would have B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. So this is going to sound completely different, because 5 of the notes are not what they would be expected to be if they were in a major scale. So like I said, each of these will create its own different pattern of tones and semitones. So for instance, here we are. We're going to look at the Aeolian mode. So like I said, it's all the white notes from A to A, and you can see them highlighted down here. But what if you didn't want to play it in the key or starting on an A? What if you wanted to play it in C? What you would need to do is work out all of the intervals between each of these notes here, and then start it on the note C. So we're going to work out the notes of the Aeolian mode in C together, and then you're going to have a go at the Dorian mode in C, but on your own. So here we go. Here is the Aeolian mode in white, those notes there. And I've worked out, using the keyboard below, that between A and B is a tone, B to C is a semitone, C to D is a tone, D to E is a tone, E to F is a semitone, F to G is a tone, and G to A is a tone. So then if I, magic, I then work it out. So if I start on C rather than A and I do a tone, I go 1, 2, I get to D, I do a semitone, that takes me to E flat, do a whole tone, 1, 2 to F, a whole tone, 1, 2 to G, a semitone to A flat, a tone 1, 2 to B flat, and a tone 1, 2 to C. So you can see now that the original Aeolian mode had no sharps or flats, but if you transpose that Aeolian mode to start on C, you then get 3 flats. Here is the Aeolian mode, and I want you to have a go at working out the Aeolian mode transposed to start on D. So if you just pause the video now. Right, so let's see how well you've got on. I've worked out the tones and semitones for you, so it shouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility. Here we go. So a tone from D, 1, 2, is E. A semitone from E is F. A tone from F, 1, 2, is G. A tone is 1, 2, that's A. A semitone from A, is B flat. A tone from B flat is 1, 2, C. And a tone from C, 1, 2, is D. So that is the Aeolian mode transposed to D. Okay, now I want you to analyse the piece again, and I want you to use these questions as a guide. Okay, so you're going to need your score. You might want your Pearson notes as well. I'm going to play you the song again. Okay, I might cut it off halfway through because it is quite a long one. But I want you to, especially at the beginning, have a look at these questions. So what is the tonality at the beginning? Bearing in mind that we've just had a look at the rhythm at the beginning and the tempo and the meter, that might help you. When does the tonality become clear? And what is the tonality at that point and how can we tell? Does the tonality change? If so, when? What's it change to and how can we tell? Does the harmony change? So this is the accompaniment and the chords. Are there chords? Are there not? If not, where is harmony implied? Okay, so have a listen. Like I said, I'll probably stop it partway through. But I want you to try and have a go at answering those questions.
Ik trust me, ik feel that she's true.
Okay, so hopefully you've had a bit of time to try and answer those questions. If you need to pause the video now just to finish off, then please feel free. Okay, so I'll just go through those questions that are on the screen for you to give you an idea of where we're at. So what's the tonality at the beginning? Well, just like with the rhythm and the meter, it's not clear because there isn't really music happening. It's sort of swirling sounds rather than actual music. So it's an ambiguous tonality. You can't quite work it out. When the talking drum comes in, there's a very softly sounding drone, which is a long held note, and that's on C. So we sort of get an idea potentially at that point. But the second question, the tonality becomes clear at figure 1 when we first hear the female vocal melody. And at this point, we can see that we're in the Aeolian mode. Okay, so all of the white notes from A to A. The tonality changes at figure 5 when we hear the Ilian pipes, and we move into the Dorian mode. And the way that we spot this is that we've got a natural sixth rather than a sharpened sixth that we've had in the Aeolian mode. Fourth question, does the harmony change? Well, the harmony itself is static, which means that it's not really moving. It's not part of a chord sequence. But again, this C is the prominent note. Just going back just a second, when I was talking about the modes, we've got the Aeolian mode in C and the Dorian mode in C. And when we're back together, I will run you through that again just to compare. You're not going to need to talk about modes and how they're different from scales and things like that, but you just need to understand that we've sort of changed key, as it were. But again, the whole piece is based around C. But rather than having C major or C minor, we've got C Dorian, we've got C Aeolian. Back to the harmony. Any harmony that's created is implied. It's not written down. This piece is not written down in a traditional way, so it's not easy to spot. Harmony is created or implied by mixing different loops on top of each other. So any changes in harmony might happen when you move a different loop into position. So yeah, anytime you have a melodic loop rather than a percussion loop, that is where sort of harmony is implied. Okay. So what I'd like you to do just to finish off this lesson is to copy down the 4 boxes that you see on your screen into the relevant pages, and we're talking about, just check, page 10, 11, 12 and 13. You should find the relevant boxes. Instrumentation is performing forces and their handling on page 10. Okay, so read through what's on here, and that is the end of this particular lesson, and I will talk to you next time. See you later.